It's time to make my pico de gallo. So I'm going to have a half of an onion chopped. So I'm going to use a bear claw, put firm pressure, cut the onion in half from pole to pole, get rid of one of the halves, turn it so it's flat side down, cut off at least one end of the onion. Then, and only then, is it very, very easy to peel. Onions are almost impossible to peel whole. From here, I'm going to do those kind of diagonal knife cuts, and then vertical knife cuts, and then back to diagonal once I get along this other side. Keeping this end intact. Using my hand in a bear claw, I'm just going to use that rocking motion to start cutting the onion into slices. Because the onion already has those natural like pulls to it, it's going to start starting to chop it for me. And then when you get down this far, you can continue to chop this. My onion was a fairly decent size, so I'm actually going to just use what I have here. From here, I'm going to use a rocking chopping motion just to get those onions a little bit smaller across the board. And that rocking motion is really what's indicative of the chop. So you're not looking for exactly finely cut pieces. They don't have to be uniform in size, but you do want them to be similar in size. They don't all have to be perfect cubes. All right, I'm going to take those onions, I'm going to add them to my bowl that I'm going to mix my pico in. And then I can move on to my tomato. So the recipe says for my tomato to dice it. I have already washed my vegetables. Washing them just means rinsing them. I'm going to cut the end of the tomato off, cut it into slices, using that one Roma tomato plus a couple of tomatoes from my garden. The smaller item you're working with, the slower you want to go to make sure that you're being careful not to cut yourself. So then from here, I'm just going to dice each piece. So giving it a couple of cuts one way, turning it, a couple of cuts the other way. As I have mentioned, tomatoes can be very slippery items. So you really want to use a sharp knife, use firm pressure, and just make sure that you're not slipping on that hard skin. Trying to keep the tip of my knife down as often as possible. The next ingredient that I'm going to cut up is a half of a cup of cilantro leaves. So this is your cilantro plant. You can use some of the stems. What I like to do is kind of just like pull the top off and then use that. And then if you want to use the rest of this, you'd probably have to go through and pick the leaves off. The top of the stems are a lot thinner than the bottoms are. So you can kind of pick through them, pull out any thicker stems. But unlike, say parsley, you can use some of the stems. You just want to make sure that they're nice and thin, okay? And from here, I'm going to chop it. So I'm going to take my hand, non-knife holding hand out of the way, And I'm just gonna use that rocking motion, tip of my knife down, and just work through it back and forth and back and forth. Now that I have my cilantro chopped, I'm going to just measure it in a 1/2 cup. It can be fairly packed. Cilantro is one of those things that most people like. Some people really don't like cilantro. They say it has a soapy taste. That's odd to me, but that's actually a thing in some people's taste buds that makes the cilantro makes it taste something in the cilantro makes it taste a little soapy. So I have my 1/2 cup. I'm gonna add that to my onions and tomato. I already have my lime quartered, and so it does say to add some lime juice to my mixture. I'm gonna wait and do that after I'm done cutting up my jalapeno. For my jalapeno, I'm probably gonna only use about 1/2 of it because my little one, Bailey, she actually loves pico de gallo and will eat the jalapenos, but just doesn't like the total spiciness of it. So most people will think that seeds are the spiciest part of jalapenos, but it's actually this white membrane that is the most spicy, and then the seeds are next. So if you take both of those out, you still get some nice heat from the jalapeno, but it's not, super overwhelming. And so the jalapeno is diced, and again, as it says in the recipe, it is optional. It's also optional how big you want to make it. Obviously, the bigger the chunks, the more bite the heat will have to it. So I'm going to go fairly fine with mine. Again, running the knife through, non-knife holding hand out of the way as I'm using that rocking chopping motion just to get it cut up nice and fine. All right, the last step of my pico de gallo is to stir all of those ingredients together, add some lime juice. I'm gonna start with one, see how that tastes. Add in some salt and pepper. Clean spoon, mix it all up, and then I will go ahead and taste it once it's all stirred together.